In 2025, the world stands at a dangerous crossroads. Geopolitical tensions are no longer whispers in diplomatic halls. They are headlines, open declarations, and public military drills. The phrase World War III has moved from the realm of speculative fiction into the uneasy vocabulary of military analysts, intelligence agencies, and ordinary citizens alike. This is not a video designed to provoke fear. It's one built on verifiable data, credible military sources, and open source intelligence. Our goal is simple: to map the most likely strategic targets in the event of a large-scale global conflict, based on updated 2025 intelligence. Before we dive into the map itself, it's important to understand what makes a city, base, or region a likely target. Nuclear and conventional strike strategies are not random. They are the calculated product of decades of military doctrine, designed to cripple an opponent's ability to fight, communicate, and recover. What determines a target in W3? Military planners use a combination of strategic priorities when selecting targets. The key categories include nuclear command and control centers. These are the nerve centers of a nation's nuclear arsenal. Knocking them out early can disrupt response capability. Strategic military bases, Air Force, Navy, and missile launch sites capable of delivering devastating counterstrikes. Industrial and economic hubs, cities where critical manufacturing, energy production, or economic infrastructure is concentrated. Population centers with political significance, capitals and large cities that represent a country's identity and governance. Logistical gateways, ports, railway junctions, and highways critical for moving troops and supplies. When intelligence agencies build these maps, they look at the minimum number of strikes needed to cripple a nation while preserving enough resources for other fronts in the conflict. Updated intel. What's changed in 2025? The 2025 landscape is different from even 5 years ago. Satellite imagery, intercepted communications, and public military statements all point to a shift in focus. Asia-Pacific tensions have intensified, with the South China Sea becoming a flashpoint not just for regional disputes but for potential global escalation. Eastern Europe remains a high-risk zone, with NATO expansion and Russian military posturing keeping the region in constant alert. Cyber warfare and EMP, electromagnetic pulse, threats are now integrated into early strike planning, meaning certain targets are chosen not just for physical destruction, but for their role in digital infrastructure. Secondary cities, once considered low priority, have moved up the list due to their role in hosting dispersed military assets and logistics. The first layer of the target map. The first layer focuses on primary nuclear strike targets. These are locations that, if attacked in the opening minutes of a conflict, would severely reduce a nation's military capability. They include major capital cities housing command and control facilities, strategic bomber bases capable of long-range nuclear delivery, submarine pens where nuclear-armed subs are docked or maintained, known intercontinental ballistic missile, ICBM, silos, and mobile launch facilities. In the United States, for example, primary targets include locations like Washington, D.C., Omaha, home to U.S. Strategic Command, and multiple sites across Montana, North Dakota, and Wyoming, where nuclear silos are clustered. In Russia, facilities such as Moscow's underground command centers, Murmansk naval bases, and missile fields in the central regions rank high. In China, Beijing, coastal submarine bases and inland missile brigades form part of the first wave target set. Why this map matters to civilians. You might think, if the worst happens, there's nothing I can do. But understanding likely target zones gives you a huge advantage in survival planning. Even a difference of 50 to 100 miles can mean the difference between immediate destruction and the chance to shelter and survive. Civil defense is often dismissed in modern times, but history shows that foreknowledge saves lives. During the Cold War, governments issued public target maps and fallout projections. While these were politically controversial, they provided citizens with critical data to make evacuation or sheltering plans. In the next part, we'll move deeper. mapping secondary and tertiary targets based on the latest 2025 intelligence and showing how some areas you think are safe may actually be high on the list for reasons that aren't obvious at first glance. When most people think of a target map, they picture major capitals and famous military bases. But history and modern military strategy tell us that in a large-scale war, secondary targets can be just as deadly, sometimes more so, because they catch civilians completely off guard. Secondary targets are not always about destroying command centers or eliminating weapons. They are often chosen to cripple the enemy's ability to recover after the initial blow. And in 2025, with supply chains already fragile and global infrastructure deeply interconnected, hitting the right secondary locations can bring a country to its knees without firing on its most obvious landmarks. What counts as a secondary target? Military planners divide these into several categories. Energy infrastructure. This includes nuclear power plants, major oil refineries, and key power grid substations. Without electricity, everything else slows to a crawl. Water treatment, hospitals, transportation, even military radar systems. Transportation chokepoints, bridges, tunnels, ports, and key railway junctions. Destroying them traps resources where they are and stops reinforcements from arriving where they're needed. Industrial production sites, factories producing weapons, ammunition, aircraft parts, or even computer chips can become top-tier targets. In an age where advanced electronics power everything from fighter jets to missile guidance systems, losing a single production hub can cripple a nation's war effort. Regional command posts, not as famous as Central Command headquarters, but still essential for coordinating localized military and emergency responses. Communications infrastructure, major broadcast centers, satellite uplinks, and fiber optic network hubs. Taking these out not only disrupts coordination, but also isolates populations, spreading panic and confusion. 2025 intelligence, new additions to the list. Updated intel shows a notable shift in what analysts consider must-hit targets. Distributed military assets. Some airfields and missile storage facilities have been deliberately moved away from major urban centers, under the assumption they'd be safer there. This decentralization means rural areas once considered low risk may now be high-value strike zones. Data centers. Massive server farms that house critical national data, including financial transactions, government records, and defense systems. In a world where cyber and kinetic warfare blend seamlessly, these facilities are now just as vulnerable as air bases. Commercial spaceports, as space becomes more militarized, facilities capable of launching satellites or military payloads have entered targeting lists. These can provide crucial surveillance and communication capabilities in wartime. Why secondary targets are so dangerous for civilians? Secondary targets often lie within or near mid-sized cities that don't consider themselves military hubs. Residents in these areas might never expect to be on any target list, and that false sense of security can be fatal. In many cases, these strikes are designed to maximize disruption rather than maximize immediate casualties. But the ripple effects can be severe. Prolonged blackouts, food and water shortages, and total breakdown of emergency services. Consider a major river crossing that feeds into a regional supply chain. Destroy that bridge and suddenly food can't reach the city on the other side. Or think of a power plant supplying electricity to a neighboring state. Remove it. And millions of people are left in the dark, hospitals forced onto backup generators and communication towers offline. Mapping the secondary layer in the updated 2025 WW3 target map. Analysts have identified clusters of these secondary targets in the U.S. Midwest, where energy and agricultural hubs intersect. Central Europe, where rail corridors linked NATO member states. Eastern China, where industrial zones and shipping ports overlap. Middle Eastern choke points, especially along vital oil shipping lanes. In a prolonged conflict, the loss of these nodes would create cascading failures across entire regions, potentially doing more long-term damage than the initial strikes on primary targets. Once primary and secondary targets have been hit, the focus shifts to what military strategists call tertiary targets, locations chosen not purely for their military value, but for their psychological and political impact. These strikes are designed to undermine morale, disrupt societal cohesion, and pressure governments into submission. Tertiary targeting isn't new. In fact, history is full of examples, from the firebombing of cultural capitals during World War II to targeted airstrikes on media centers during more recent conflicts. What makes 2025 different is the range of tools available: conventional munitions, precision-guided missiles, cyber-enabled sabotage, and even information warfare campaigns that blend physical destruction with digital chaos. What counts as a tertiary target? Political symbols, striking legislative buildings, presidential palaces, or historical monuments sends a direct message to both the government and its citizens. Your leadership cannot protect you. Cultural and religious sites. In some conflicts, destroying these sites is a calculated move to demoralize populations or inflame sectarian divisions. Media hubs, targeting television stations, radio transmitters, and large news agencies cuts off the flow of information and increases reliance on enemy-controlled narratives. Economic confidence points, stock exchanges, banking districts, and corporate headquarters. Even without destroying the entire economy, hitting these symbols can trigger market panic. Public gathering spaces, stadiums, convention centers, or landmarks where large events are held. The goal here is disruption of normal life and spreading fear. The cyber-physical crossover, one of the most dangerous evolutions in 2025 warfare, is the blending of cyber attacks with physical strikes. Imagine a coordinated plan where, moments before a missile strike on a major city, a cyber offensive shuts down local emergency alert systems, disables power grids, or falsifies evacuations. This hybrid tactic maximizes chaos and reduces the effectiveness of civilian defense measures. For example, a strike on a national parliament building could be paired with a simultaneous cyber attack on the country's largest news network, replacing with enemy propaganda. The damage becomes both physical and psychological. Why these targets matter in the bigger picture. Primary and secondary targets degrade an opponent's ability to fight. Tertiary targets degrade their willingness to fight. Military strategists know that if they can make civilians lose faith in their leaders and institutions, they may force political concessions faster than through direct military confrontation alone. It's not just about killing or destroying. It's about breaking the spirit. When citizens no longer feel safe in cultural landmarks, when national symbols lie in ruins, and when the media is silent or manipulated, a population's resolve can crumble, even if the military is still capable of fighting. 2025 examples from the updated map recent. Intelligence updates have identified likely tertiary target zones in central London, Houses of Parliament, major media networks, and financial districts. New York City, Wall Street, United Nations headquarters, and iconic landmarks like the Statue of Liberty as symbolic strikes. Tokyo, government buildings in Chiyoda and Shinjuku, as well as major tech company headquarters. Moscow, Red Square and national broadcasting hubs. Paris, the Élysée Palace, major sports venues, and cultural icons. In each case, the military value is secondary. The psychological value is primary. By now, we've explored the three core layers of targeting in a potential World War III scenario. Primary targets that cripple command and strike capability. Secondary targets that dismantle infrastructure and logistics. Tertiary targets that attack morale and political stability. But when you combine them, the real picture emerges, one that is geographically complex and far more interconnected than most people realize. The layered strike concept, modern military doctrine, rarely isolates one type of target. Instead, planners layer strikes for maximum impact. Opening minutes, primary plus cyber. Simultaneous nuclear or precision strikes against command centers. Nuclear silos and air bases, often paired with cyber attacks to blind or confuse defenses. First 24 hours, secondary hits. Follow-up attacks on energy grids. Transportation choke points, and industrial hubs designed to keep the opponent from regrouping. First week, tertiary and psychological, highly visible strikes on political and cultural symbols, combined with disinformation campaigns to spread panic. This sequence ensures that even if a nation's military survives the initial onslaught, its ability to coordinate, supply, and motivate its forces is severely diminished. Reading the updated 2025 map, the new intelligence overlays are revealing some unsettling patterns. Overlap zones. Certain regions appear in all three target layers. These are total wipe areas where survival chances are near zero without advanced shelter. Examples include Washington, D.C., Moscow's central districts, and Beijing's military administrative core. Ripple zones, areas not directly targeted but within fallout or EMP range. For example, rural regions downwind from missile fields in North Dakota, or near European industrial corridors, could still be rendered uninhabitable. Choke zones, critical passages like the Bosporus Strait, the Panama Canal, and Taiwan's main shipping lanes. These may not be attacked with nukes, but could see intense conventional strikes. Decoy. Some targets are chosen less for strategic need, and more to draw enemy attention away from more critical assets. Strikes here may be loud, destructive, and highly publicized. Why civilians must think in layers too. When most people think of safety in war, they imagine simply being outside the blast zone. But this is dangerously oversimplified. Survival depends on three overlapping factors: distance from immediate targets, being outside the range of thermal radiation, overpressure, and debris in the first strike, exposure to secondary effects, avoiding fallout plumes, EMP zones, and infrastructure collapse, sustainability and isolation, access to food, water, and heat when supply chains fail. Someone living 150 miles from a primary target could still be in danger if they within the fallout path of multiple strikes, or if the destruction of transport hubs cuts off essential resources. The global map in 2025, pulling together the latest intel. Analysts have identified high probability strike clusters: North America, Eastern Seaboard cities, Midwest missile fields, West Coast naval bases, Europe, NATO headquarters, Eastern European border states, and major industrial belts in Germany and Poland. Asia Pacific, Chinese coastal military complexes, Japanese government districts, and South Korean command posts. Middle East, strategic oil fields, shipping lanes, and allied air bases. No map can predict the exact outcome of a future conflict. But by understanding how these layers interact, civilians can make informed decisions about evacuation plans, shelter locations, and resource storage. Closing message maps like these are not meant to cause panic. They're meant to inform. The difference between being in the wrong place at the wrong time and having a fighting chance often comes down to knowledge before the crisis. If tensions continue to rise, every day spent understanding the terrain, the likely target priorities, and your personal plan increases your odds of survival. In 2025, the world may be closer than ever to the brink, but that also means there's no excuse for being caught unprepared.